Yeah, so as you mentioned, the bridge is, in simple terms, I guess I'd say it's old and tired. It was originally constructed in 1860. In the early 1900s, the superstructure was rebuilt. Our recent inspections have shown significant deterioration of the bridge, which triggered the current project and the need to replace the bridge.
Today we're talking about one of the most significant rail projects in New York State, the Livingston Avenue Bridge project, going on right now in Albany.
The New York State Department of Transportation presents the DOT POD.
And welcome into DOT POD. I'm Josh Heller.
And I'm Anya Cardos.
And we are delighted to have you joining us. Well, the Livingston Avenue Bridge has been carrying trains across the Hudson River since the Civil War era. Now, more than 150 years later, it's being replaced to meet the needs of modern rail travel while also expanding pedestrian access with a design that respects its historic roots.
And today we're very proud to be joined by Jeff Moryl, Director of DOT's Project Management Office, and Sue Torelli, Director of our Rail Projects Group. They're going to talk a little bit about the bridge's history, why this project matters so much, and what it takes to replace a critical rail crossing without stopping the trains and passengers that rely on it each day. Welcome, Sue and Jeff.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
We always like to kick things off by asking our guests a bit about themselves, their work here. So, Sue, why don't you get us started?
I have been at DOT for actually only 6 years. Before that, I was in consulting. So I did almost 20 years doing highway projects, project management. And so when I came to DOT, I actually fell into the rail group. And I mean, it's similar, managing projects for the traveling public. So I've been working with rail for 6 years now.
Wonderful. Jeff?
Hi, I've actually been at DOT coming up on 28 years.
Congrats.
Thank you. I started out in the Geotech Engineering Bureau, worked there for nearly 20 years, and then I moved on to the Project Management Office, of which I'm currently the director. In the office, one of my primary responsibilities is oversight of the department's design-build program.
Excellent, excellent. Well, again, welcome to you both, and thanks for taking some time with us here. So I guess we'll start out with the basics. And for anyone who is in this area, in this region, they know the Livingston Avenue Bridge, maybe have gone over a train over the Livingston Avenue Bridge. But let's talk about it a little bit. Work started this summer on a bridge that honestly has played a significant role in connecting upstate New York with the entire Northeast for generations now. So share a little bit about the history of the bridge and I guess what makes it so significant still to this day.
So Livingston Avenue Bridge, which we'll throw the acronym in there, we call it LAB. So if we say that, that's Livingston Avenue Bridge. So again, like you said, it's really old. The substructure is from 1860. I think the steel was erected in 1903. So it's definitely towards the end of its lifespan. But it's a very critical connection for rail travel. And it is the only upstate passenger rail crossing of the Hudson River. So it connects all trains that come from New York City and point south in the state to the western part of the state in Niagara Falls. So it's definitely a very critical connection.
Yeah, it's really old. And we were looking, Josh and I were looking at up part of its history and looking at old paintings and drawings of it and how the piers or the footings. I mean, it's hard to imagine that this is, before they were taking pictures of this bridge, and the base kind of looks the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I found it was from an almanac. It is an article published on July 6th of 1867 in Scientific American, and it's very old-timey language, but I do enjoy it. But it does talk about it. It says, finally, all obstacles were overcome, and the work on this bridge was commenced at the end of the Civil War in April 1864, with the first locomotive, the Augustus Shell of the Hudson River Railroad, crossing the bridge on February 15th, 1866, and the first passenger train on February 22nd, 1866, which is wild.
Right.
And obviously that's not for the entire structure because it was, rebuilt, but built on top of stuff that's from 1866. That is crazy.
Right.
And good job on them. They built a good bridge.
And so many years later, here we started construction in the summertime. At the time of this recording, though, we're in the midst of winter. What is going on right now?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the bridge is, in simple terms, I guess I'd say it's old and tired. It was originally constructed in 1860. In the early 1900s, the superstructure was rebuilt. Our recent inspections have shown significant deterioration of the bridge, which triggered the current project and the need to replace the bridge. With the limitations due to the deterioration, the bridge had weight and speed restrictions on it. There was a restriction now. It's a 2-track bridge, but only one train could cross the bridge at a time, and it was limited to a maximum speed of 15 miles per hour. So this obviously had a major impact on both passenger and freight service across the bridge and across the state. So we now have a project underway where we're going to try to build a new modern bridge to current design codes and standards. And also there's just some other features which we'll probably get into that are some benefits to the community as well.
Now, because it's still in use, even though, as you said, it's a little bit limited now with just one track at a time. And I mentioned...
It's, 25 miles per hour?
I think it's only 15.
15?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where if you've been on it, and I have gone over it, it's slow. You notice. But because it is still in use and is still necessary, it's not something you can just knock down and build right on top of it. So that's not what we're doing. We're building a new bridge next to it, essentially.
Right, and that's one of the critical challenges of the project is to try to maintain the existing service while constructing the new bridge. So with a rail, unlike a highway, it's hard to just shift rail traffic or the tracks in order to meet the standards that they need, and the tracks are pretty level and such. So the challenge is to try to build something directly adjacent that won't impact the existing during construction. It would allow you to keep service ongoing and then be able to build a new bridge and then tie it in later on both sides to the existing tracks.
And so that's what you're working on now is the building of the new bridge. I imagine starting with the new footers.
Correct. So we're currently, the new bridge is going to the south of the existing bridge, and we are currently out working in the water. We've got piers. The first pier has actually just been drilled and concreted this week, so that was a significant milestone for us. We're also working on the abutments on both sides of the river, working on the foundations for those.
And how close is it going to be to the old bridge? I mean, how close are we talking here?
We're talking about 25 feet.
Oh, so real close.
Wow. It's real close. So, that's something that had to be considered in the types of foundations being used. And also there's some extensive monitoring of the existing bridge that's in place out there to make sure the vibrations don't cause any damage or any movement in the bridge.
And we can go into a little bit more on that in just a minute, but I want to bring in Sue right now. Let's talk about funding. This is a huge project and one that really couldn't be undertaken without a ton of funding. What kind of support like that is needed to get this project off the ground?
So this project has been in the queue, in the backlog for New York State and Amtrak for quite some time. I mean, I think everyone recognized that, we can't lose this connection, so I think it was all the way back in 2011 that we, the Rail Projects Group in New York State, applied for a grant for preliminary engineering and also an environmental assessment of some alternatives. So, like Jeff was saying, we identified that we wanted to build it to the south. There was other alternatives of building it to the north, building a new alignment. So that process was, I think it was 11 years. I think we finally finished the preliminary engineering in 2022. So at that point, New York State governor, the commissioner, they all made this a priority project, and it was funded in the state budget actually in full, which really obviously talks to its significance. And then we were able to, after that, go after a few other federal funds through FHWA and FRA.
So for something that's been going on for so long, what does it feel like now that there's actually work happening on it? Is it a little bit surreal that it's gonna happen eventually, and then oh no, we're doing it now. We have the funding for it. That has to be a pretty surreal moment of like all this you've been working on has been kind of existential, and then now we have actual work going on. That's got to be a cool feeling.
Do you go there and stand there and sort of like look
I
in
did
awe?
go out there a few weeks ago, and what's actually convenient is the old bridge is still there. It makes a nice little walkway that you can see the construction and look down on it in the river. So you can actually get pretty close to what's going on to look at it. And yeah, it's really impressive.
Yeah. Jeff, what is that feeling like for you?
Well, it's one of these things at DOT, we see this a lot where this project is way off on the horizon, and it's you hear about it for a long time, and there's a lot of talk, and then, to see it finally come to fruition is a nice accomplishment to see this underway now. And, getting the funding squared away and everything else was a big milestone. So it's great to finally get it in construction.
I'll feel much better when it's done. Talk
We
to
still
me
have
then.
a long way to
Talk
go.
me then.
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk about the design. Jeff, can you go into this a little bit? The bridge, it had a swing bridge, or the old bridge has a swing bridge. The new bridge is going to have a lift bridge. Correct? So can you describe the difference between the two of those?
Sure.
And why that change is being made?
Sure. So swing bridge is something where the bridge literally rotates to open up the navigational channel to larger ships. Some of the limitations on a swing bridge are the clear width, or the horizontal clearance of the channel is kind of limited, because the bridge itself, the structural capacity of the bridge is kind of a limiting factor on how wide of a span you can have. So by going with the lift bridge, we're actually able to open up a larger unobstructed clear width of, in this case, the original swing bridge we had, it was just under 90-something feet of clear width. And on the new lift span, the project requirement was 190 feet, a minimum of 190, and we're actually going to be exceeding that. We're going to be over 200 feet.
So it's a lot larger boats can go through there without any concerns.
Right. It really helps with the flexibility and maneuverability for boaters, and also it decreases the risk of one of the larger ships maybe impacting the structure as it's coming through.
And Josh talked a little bit about the history of the bridge, like a moment ago, reading that old article. And how are you getting back to the bridge's roots, really, and its look with the design?
So I think that started, when we go through that process of the environmental assessment and the impacts that a new structure will have. And so, one of the things we have to do is go through all the permitting and obviously work with the State Historic Office and, making sure that what we're doing and what we're putting back is consistent. So, some of the things that were requirements of the new bridge were it had to be a truss structure. It had to be a certain color. Even so far as, we were out there measuring the stones on the abutment and making sure that when it's designed that they'll have a special form to, make the concrete look like the old abutments. So, there's a lot of things that took 11 years to make those decisions and get
some
through.
time to do it.
We've talked to a number of people about a number of different projects. But working in the Hudson River has to have its own unique challenges, we'll say. Especially you think like this time of year, it's frozen, it's moving, there's current. How, what extra level of difficulty is there when you're planning this and when you're putting this into action to be able to, it's one thing to, hey, we want to build a bridge. It's another thing to, hey, I want to build a bridge in the middle of a river, and, and all the things that can pop up because of that you not necessarily can't always plan for.
I mean, we had people in, wetsuits doing mussel surveys and relocating mussels. I mean, it's lots of those things, and working in certain windows, construction's limited to certain times of year. And
I would say the level of complexity is very high. We had to go through, just back during design, leading up to procurement, we had to go through an extensive environmental analysis process with the FRA, the Federal Rail Administration, as the lead agency. So that was an extensive process, which considered things like the historic aspects of the structure, but it also considered the environmental impacts. So now, as we get into construction, we had to obtain a joint permit. There's multiple agencies that are involved in that, from the United States Coast Guard, United States Army Corps, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, even New York State OGS was involved. So There's a lot that goes with it, and there's a lot. There's coordination with the National Marine Fisheries to try to determine all the impacts of what we're proposing to do.
And I think it's interesting, and obviously this is down the line, but you talk about the environmental impacts of building it. What about the complexities of taking down the old bridge? I mean, this is you're trying to make sure that things aren't getting into the water, but you're also, you're 25 feet away from the new bridge. I mean, that has to have its own complexities, and I'm sure that's ready to go when it is time, and obviously that'll be a bit. But talk about what's going to happen at that point. And all right, we built our new bridge, it's online, we're great. But we have to take down a massive structure that's been there for over 100 years. That's no small task.
Yeah, no, that's going to be a challenge. All work that we do in the river has restrictions based on our joint permit. From March 1st until June 30th, we have restriction on in-water work. There's no in-water work allowed. And then from March 15th to September 30th, we have a restriction on any settlement disturbing activities. Okay, so that's really what that's done is that's forced a lot of the work to be performed in the winter. And then if there's ways they can work within cofferdams in a protected area so that they're not impacting the water or the sediment at the bottom, then they can continue with that type of work in the summer. So when you get to demo, it's the same challenges for construction really, but when you get to demo, obviously the Coast Guard is concerned with how you're going to leave the status of the foundations, whether you have to cut them down below the mud line. They're concerned about something that might be sticking up or any other debris that's left in the river. So, surveys have to be done afterward to verify. But it's a complex process for sure. Some of the structure will be taken apart, put on barges, and floated downriver.
That's going to be interesting to witness.
Yeah, and with the project of a bridge that's as old as it is, and with the when you're taking down the piers that are even older in 1860, is there a question of what you might find? Or have you done enough? I know you're in geotechnical services. I'm sure you've taken a look down there. But is there
surprises?
Who knows? We're talking 160 plus years.
I think the thing that surprised me the most, or you listed a bunch of challenges of taking it down. It was the challenges that you don't expect. Like one, finding stuff, obviously. Mm-hmm. But two, I didn't realize when we went through, the coordination with SHPO is that, we had to advertise the bridge to see if somebody wanted to repurpose it. That was part of the requirement of going through that process.
Basically, bridge.
And can you explain
no one bought it
real quick?
So no one bought it. We advertised it. No one was interested. But if anyone's still interested,
you got a bridge you want to sell?
Let us know. We can sell some.
You have to come and pick it up, though.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the only catch.
Some disassembly.
There's always a catch.
So real quick, explain SHPO. What SHPO is?
The State Historic Preservation Office, and like I said, we worked with them through that preliminary engineering and environmental assessment process to establish kind of what the look of the bridge was going to be. So anything that's historic in the state, if you have an adverse impact to it, you have to work with them to mitigate your impacts. Right. And so one of the mitigations was sell it and reuse it.
Who would buy it? We're talking. I'm guessing like a municipality maybe or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not like someone like, I got a few bucks in my wallet, but I'm not buying. The Livingston Avenue Bridge.
You want to live on the bridge?
I could. Because like you said, it's not just
Airbnb.
like, hey, I can afford it. It's I gotta get it.
I gotta get a barge to get it.
We've had situations in the past where a municipality or some nonprofit organization that's maybe trying to build a trail or something might be interested in some kind of small truss bridge like that. But this is very large, so just like I said, delivery and transport's a problem.
What's interesting, you just mentioned a trail. This bridge is very unique in that it has a shared pathway for pedestrians. So this is going to link to the Albany Skyway. This will connect Albany and the city of Rensselaer across the other side of the river, the Hudson River, in a very unique way. Talk about that part of this project and why it was so important. We are the Department of Transportation, but that does not just mean cars. It means rail. It also means people, cyclists, walkers, all kinds of users. Talk about that.
So I think one of the things that got a lot of support behind the project, at least, for funding it, was just that, is that it had other benefits and not just 2 rail. So, while obviously it's going to benefit rail travel in New York State, it also has pedestrians, but it also has, as Jeff mentioned, like it's opening a bigger waterway. So it'll have, positive impacts there. The current crossing is over the Dunn Memorial Bridge. You ride your bike or you walk next to traffic. So it's not ideal. And I think this is really, when it opens, it's going to be a much calmer crossing, a much more comfortable crossing for people.
How big is it? How wide will it be?
12 feet.
Yeah, and the trains will be on the other side of it.
Right. It's separated
Yep.
from the rail tracks. There's fencing required, and there's also rails. But the truss itself will separate some of the bridge. Some of the bridge will be cantilevered off the truss, and then when you get past the truss sections of the bridge, it's an actual separate independent structure.
Well, obviously, we've talked about how long how long time coming this has been. But this is a project that's going to take some time. That's just the way it is, especially with some of the restrictions that you have and when you can work in the water and things of that nature. But it's always this far off. Dangerous, I suppose, to say like, oh, it's going to be open on X date. But what is the timeline that we're looking at for something of this magnitude to be there and to be open and to allow the trains to 2 trains to go at the same time, to go faster than 50 miles an hour, and for you to walk down there? Like, what are we thinking timeline wise?
Right. So the contract that we have in place is a design build contract with Skanska Koch joint venture. The contract was awarded in May of 2024. We got off to a little bit of a slow start because that first winter we're not able to obtain all the environmental permits. So that kind of interfered with some of the early works that were planned for that first winter. But, now things are going full bore out there. We've got, like I said, piers being drilled, abutments are being worked on. Our plan right now is for 1 track on the new bridge to be open in the winter of 27, 28. And then by sometime in 2028, we should have both tracks open, and we'll at that point begin on the demolition of the existing bridge.
Some of the railroad challenges you talked about a little bit, Jeff, like environmental and railroad. One of the things I think is interesting is that the phasing of it and how important that is. I mean, not only I didn't mention it yet, but they turn trains on there. So any train that comes from New York City, I say turn trains. It's literally turning a train around. So any train that comes from New York City up to Rensselaer and back actually goes past the station and goes like through the Y
It's a 3-point turn.
onto the bridge. They do a 3-point turn and turn around, and they use the bridge. So like that was really important with the phasing, and that one of those tracks had to be maintained at least the distance of the train to be able to be turned around.
Because it's still going to be doing that on the new bridge.
Yes. But it has to continue to be able to do that on the old one until the new one's built.
You don't think about trains doing 3-point turns.
Yes, it does. I actually rode on it when it did it once. It's kind of cool. Some guy came with like a walkie-talkie to the back of the train and was like, "Yep, yeah, a little bit further. Yep, yeah, okay, good." And then it was crazy.
All right, so your group worked really closely with Amtrak. What was that kind of coordination like?
So obviously they were a partner when we did the original preliminary engineering, but we work with Amtrak regularly. We do strategic planning for the state to increase ridership. New York State supports Amtrak service, so we work with them on operations, but also with capital projects. To reduce delay, make things more reliable. Obviously this bridge, it opens 300 times a year and it gets stuck. It gets stuck open, and these are parts that like you can't just run out to Lowe's and like pick up. They have to like manufacture new parts like for the span to open and close. So it's really replacing it is going to reduce a lot of delay. And that's one of the things, our projects that we work with Amtrak looks at. But coordination wise, other than being involved in the preliminary work, when we do get into construction, Amtrak's really involved because they actually do some of the work. We have contracts with them not only to be on site to make sure like nothing fouls the tracks, so they have safety personnel that are out there every day, making sure that construction operations don't, impact any of the service. But they're also constructing the tracks and doing a lot of work. So, they work closely with the contractor in coordinating those efforts. So they're very involved. They review all the plans to make sure they meet standards. And so that we work with them very extensively every single day.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, thank you both for first of all for coming down and chatting with us and taking some time and for all the work that you both have done for this project. Like we said, it's a long time coming, and obviously we're here at main office. That's not too far from us, so it's cool to see the work that's already started, and it's going to be pretty cool to follow along and stick around on the DOT POD. We will update people as it goes along for sure. But again, thank you both for taking some time and for chatting with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Well, that'll just about do it for us from the DOT POD. Thanks so much for tuning in wherever and however you may be doing so. Anya, another good one in the books.
Yeah, this is truly an historic project. It's really fascinating, and I loved seeing or listening to the behind-the-scenes kind of stuff that's going on.
No question about it. No question about it. Podcast at dot.ny.gov is the easiest way to get in touch with us. That's podcast at dot.ny.gov. So, for Anya, I'm Josh. We'll be right back here on the DOT POD.